Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 2025, I guess. Welcome to Our Undoing Radio, for sure. This is a continuation of last week's conversation, but as indicated at the end, it takes a hard right turn, so you won't really need to have listened to last week's to listen to this, except to see how neatly we tie it into a bow at the end. Maybe, kind of sloppily. I just wanted to take a moment here to thank everyone for listening and to welcome the new listeners. I keep getting emails and messages from people saying that they discovered Tom and I through Jeff Kripal's book, How to Think Impossibly, or discovered me through Tom Cheetham's class, or really no one's discovered Tom through me, I don't think, except people are already listening to me. So probably I'm the only one gaining anything here. So thanks, everyone. But in any event, I just want to welcome everyone and say thank you for the positive feedback. And I had posted to Blue Sky, and I will extend the offer here, of course, and to Ko-Fi or coffee.com/JVay, ko-fi.com/JVay, that if anyone has anything that they would like to hear Tom and I tackle, or muddle our way through, please send me your suggestions. Or if there's anything that is still confusing, and I'm sure it's a lot, that we've already talked about, let me know, and we will go back over it. Someone has already given me a suggestion and wanted to hear the two of us talk about it, even though I had offered, hey, you want me to do this solo? Is that better for you, or Tom and I? And apparently people, not just this guy, but a lot of people seem to really enjoy our dynamic. I mean, so much so that there's someone else I had invited on to do an episode that he wanted to hear us do about AI. And I was like, well, why don't you come on with us and do it? And he's like, no, you're dynamic. You have a dynamic going that I think I would just ruin by being there. So, but I've been hearing this from people that they appreciate the dynamic between the two of us, and I'm glad. I'm glad that people are liking this, because, obviously I see the podcast stats, so I know that we've got a good chunk of listenership, but Tom doesn't know that. He just thinks like 10 people are listening to us. So it's not 10, Tom. It's not 12. It's like 13. So good job. Good job, both of us, in attracting 13 people. In any event, that's it. I just wanted to say thanks. And also, at the end of our discussion here, there was another person who had written to me. And so I want to read that email and I want to respond to it, as I told him I would. But if you want to, again, write to me your suggestions or your confusions, or, perhaps you'd like to come on and talk to us both. I haven't passed this by Tom. I'm sure he'd be down with it, though, at least once experimentally, until like some crazy person shows up. I mean, if you're going to be crazy, be fun crazy. Don't be like lunatic crazy. You can write to me, Jeremy at ourundoing.com. That is JEREMY at ourundoing.com. Our Undoing is all one word. Or if you're already on Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com/JAYVAY. You can obviously message me there, or if you're on Blue Sky, wherever you know me from, if you know me around from anywhere, hit me up there. If you know me from nowhere, Jeremy at ourundoing.com, that's easy enough, right? All right. And also, go bother Tom. He likes to be bothered at his Substack, which is in the description. It's tomcheetham.substack.com. But I'm not spelling that. So, go to the description. Go to the description, damn it. All right, here is the rest of our conversation. Then I will see you at the end for letters. Letters. We got letters. Okay. Something else that you had mentioned in an email. Drones. Highly irrelevant right now because apparently they just disappeared. Except, sort of. They're being co-opted by, fake whistleblowers doing right-wing podcasts to pretend as though these are secret Chinese anti-gravity technology. Like this kind of thing. Like Paul Ryan,
I
the
just
podcast,
saw
just had a
that.
guy on talking about this and
I
linking it up to one of the guys who, drove a car bomb into a crowd or
Yes,
whatever.
oh God, yeah. All right, go ahead. Go ahead,
So,
Jeremy.
okay. Well, here's the thing. Maybe we can relate this eventually, but the drone thing really bothers me because it's drones. This isn't UFOs. This is drones. I don't know what the initial sighting was in New Jersey, where if it was just an accident where a bunch of people were doing like choreographed moves with drones at night that made it look as though it was some sort of UFO activity, and then they never stepped forward to say, "Hey, that was me. Didn't mean to scare you guys." Or if someone did it as a hoax to emulate UFO footage of lights coming together and coming apart. But what we know is that everything after that, at least, has been nothing. Has not even necessarily been drones, but airplanes from an airport. So somehow, I just want to impress upon people how bizarre it is, how much it's not bizarre when you really get to like how meaningless our lives are at this point, where we so want meaning that even people who live near an airport have amnesia about what it looks like when an airplane comes and goes from that airport. And, the sense of depth perception, like if you've been told by a stranger, an anonymous person on a forum or on Twitter, that, hey, I saw a drone and it was like 6 or 7 feet long and it was blah, blah, blah. When you see a drone, which is a commercial drone, which is tiny, you will imagine that that is a 6 or 7 foot long mystery drone. What's going on here? And then people start putting drones into the sky to spot these mystery drones, and suddenly the sky is filled with drones, and what's going on here? And then we've got a media, including the so-called liberal media of MSNBC, all of the media are in on promoting this crap because I apparently have nothing better to do at the end of civilization. But all of this, my point here is like,
Yeah.
not only is this explainable, it's explained. And we so don't want it to, like, there's something in this. We should, again, it's how you look at this. You can look at it and laugh it off, or you look at it and go, yeah, there's a mystery here. There isn't a mystery here. And so, why aren't we looking at, like, we so want meaning. We so desperately want something above us and outside of us and meaningful, and that we quite literally are looking at things above us to find meaning. It's like, but it's even more insane than that. It's like having a cargo cult, but we know that that's cargo. It's like,
Yeah,
if you know that's cargo, you don't do the cargo cult.
yeah, yeah.
But we're pretending that we don't know things now. We're pretending there's no such thing as a fact. And just as mysteriously as this came, Christmas happened and New Year's happened and we've sort of forgotten about it, and so it's not a thing anymore. But are any of those people who believe that gonna admit that this, or are they just gonna have amnesia and go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing?
No, well, okay. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. So I got an email. I had been ignoring it the whole. I heard about the mystery things in New Jersey, and I thought, I don't care. Um, and somebody who I know and respect said, "Hey, have you heard about these things?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't care about it." "What do you mean you don't care?" And then they raked me over the coals and said, "You're the you're the person that got us all interested in this UFO stuff, and now when it really happens, you abandon us." And I said, "No, no, I have seen nothing which suggests that there's anything interesting going on here." And then this person sent me a I don't know, YouTube video of two guys who had film footage, and I watched it for 15 minutes or so. And they were very serious. And one of them was a UFO expert. I never heard of these people, but then I wouldn't anyway. And I watched the footage and I thought, well, that's weird. And it was from Minnesota or something. And it was a strange ball of light. And I just thought, from my point of view, there's no way there's no way in God's green earth that I can have an opinion one way or another about something that I saw, which was said to be a video taken by someone and then shown on YouTube, and it came from, I mean, there's no chain of custody here. you know,
Yeah.
there's no experts. I mean, I don't care. I mean, and people would say, well, that's what we need. We need the chain of experts. And why won't the government talk to us? And then it's like, okay, I'm out. And there's just no, and this is, but the larger point that is that this is exactly how our politics works now. There's no facts.
Yeah.
There's no facts.
Well, and you've got politicians out there who are filming in Jersey, filming airplanes landing, and telling you this is a mystery, and we demand that the military tell us what this is. And it's like, well, okay, we will. It's an airplane landing. Oh, you don't like that? Well, we just told you what it was.
We just
But
told you what
meanwhile,
it
the
was.
Pentagon has to do press conference after press conference, and either they feel like they have to pussyfoot around the angry mob of morons, or they're doing it on purpose, to control the angry mob of morons, to put their energy into nonsense that doesn't matter. It's one of the two. And somebody online had said to me, because I thought we had a miscommunication, but it doesn't matter that we had a miscommunication because he still thought I was going after him about the drone thing, and said, as I was saying, it's all nonsense. He's saying, which itch does that saying that scratch for you? That we're all stupid and don't know things, or that we're all delusional? Why would you? And it's like, it doesn't scratch either itch. It makes me sad, actually, is
Yeah,
like my real response.
yeah.
But the fact that you are defensive, no, you are one of the two. You're either misidentifying something or you're delusional. Like, those are your options, actually, because
It's
it ain't nothing.
there's a lot to be said here from philosophically from an epistemological point of view, which is to say we're, that reality, the world, um, is so mediated now by YouTube and videos and the news, that it becomes in principle impossible to trust anything that you see on a screen. And that's a very bad place to be as a civilization. And how we solve this, if we solve this, is anybody's guess, and it's going to take a long time. And you could say, as Tyson Yunkaporta does, that it's been downhill since the Sumerians. Um, or you could go with Plato and say, uh-oh, this writing thing, oh no, people are going to think I meant what I said. I like Tyson's claim. He says, this is really good, and I won't be able to find it. But he says, he's talking about indigenous knowledge of reality in a very general way. And he's pointing out that, gosh, it's very hard to communicate things that you can only really know in the context of what we call the dreaming. And he doesn't like the word dreaming at all. Um, and he says, and so I worked for 2 months, and I worked on these things. I did some carvings, and I talked with my friends, and then I tried to write some of this down, and it changed as soon as I wrote it down. And then it wasn't true any longer. And he's struggling, I think, with the same issues that used to be reserved for mystics and awakened people, the 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 uncapturable nature of what's really real. And we now find ourselves, oh God, this, yeah, it would take forever to try to tease these things apart, where even fucking airplanes in the sky now are impossible to cognize because there's it's like, oh shit, we're screwed, man.
Well, and let's throw another layer onto there because that's always fun. So one way to analogize this is to the satanic panic of the 80s, where a bunch of kids like get hypnotized and are like, my entire town is trying to feed me to the devil or whatever. And then it turns in, oh my God, these kids. And then it turns out to be there's nothing there. The other way to look at this too, possibly, is the airship sightings of the 1800s, early 1900s, where people were seeing these mystery dirigibles and having experiences with human-like beings who seemed to just say, where are you from? Oh, I'm from everywhere. Oh, I'm from nowhere. Hey, don't worry about it. And then, cut to like 2 years later and dirigibles actually exist. This is right before they exist. And then they exist. And it turns out that like within, I saw a thing, saying like within the next 5 or 6 years, there are going to be those large commercial drones that people are claiming to see. That they wouldn't be there now because if it were military drones you don't see, apparently they're so good you don't see them or they're too high up or whatever. But the commercial drones you wouldn't want, I saw someone making the case that like no corporation is going to put them out there for you to see, to study, to get in on their secrets before they actually launch them. So it wouldn't be that. But what if there were? I'm just playing with an idea here. What if there were, again, the universe responding to like the immediate future in this way of like, get ready, because you're going to start seeing this crap everywhere for realsies, like within a few years. I don't know. I just think like that's an interesting thing to play with as like this Jacques Vallée moment of like, the universe is showing you something.
I mean,
right ahead of it becoming a thing.
That brings in, oh God, Jeff Kripal's recent book, which I read a while back, and now I don't remember. But there's all sorts of stuff in there about time travel. Yeah, his whole chapter on Elliot Wolfson is about circular time and time travel and all these things. And I just, you know, oh God, see, this is this is this is why we had the Great Enlightenment, because people said, "Hey, man, there's got to be some ground rules for rationality here," and and maybe that hasn't gone so well, but when oh God, you see what the drive for rationality is based on, because the awkward, this actually, can I draw this into a little ball? The Let's try it this way: the awkwardness of the present moment in history, and maybe you could go back to late Roman Empire or something for an analogously complex and multicultural time of confusion where nobody knew what was up and what was down, and politics was a chaos, and you'd had Jesus here and Mani here and the Buddha. It's like, oh my God, nobody knew. We're in a time now where science is kind of in a quandary. Politics is a catastrophe. Nobody who's online at all has any reason to trust anything. And then if you're suitably inclined, you throw up your hands and say, well, maybe three-dimensional space and linear time, maybe they're wrong too. And if you're it's going to be a while before the pieces start settling, if they ever do. And the pattern that emerges out of that, or the patterns that emerge, which are the foundations of possible future societies, or none, um, will be very different from those we have now. So the fact that people are all insane is not a big surprise and should only be worrisome if you if you're interested in the continuance of humanity.
Well, let me make it depressing. Let me make it more depressing.
Yeah, let's see if we can turn
I don't
this
know. I
dark.
had a yeah, yes. I had a flash of this the other day of like I don't know if you remember my dream, one of my dreams. I wrote about it, and I know why the aliens don't land in probably another book. But it was the high school dream of seeing all sorts of animals in an aquarium go around. This the female voice starts explaining, well, okay, so the aquarium drains and all the fish and lions and ostriches and whatever just flop down on each other. And then the aquarium starts filling with black ooze,
Yeah, yeah,
oil,
yeah.
whatever, filling off. And this female voice explaining that this is what we're doing to Earth and we've got to stop and blah. And so I had a flash of like that aquarium. We're in that aquarium, except it's not animals anymore. Like we're in oil, even necessarily. It's plastics. Like we are literally all,
Yeah.
we've got microplastics in us. We're breathing it at birth. We are giving birth to babies with plastics in them. And of course, because we've got plastics everywhere that we have created, and now we're putting more into the atmosphere. So the thing that we need, it's like you look at the layers of like plastics on the ground. Now we're going to have what with the commercial drones and with the corporate drones and the military drones, an atmosphere full of plastic crap. And then above that, planes. And then above that, satellites. Like we have created this ecosystem of plastics and other crap. But essentially, it's like almost as though the door has closed on the world. That dream is irrelevant. We have collapsed the species. We are filling it with the sludge. Like that's done. And now we're on to plastics. We just moved on to other pollutions. And like, I almost wonder if there is a Jacques Valléan spin on this that is real. That is the universe in some way through delusion and dumb, mentally preparing us for the next level of like crap we're going to be seeing in the sky. Is that what that is? I don't know. Is that what that is? Like, is it going to be so spectacularly bad that we need a psychic premonition of it? I guess is what I'm saying.
Huh.
Like, it doesn't sound so bad because we've already got commercial drones and we're going to have these. But is it too much? Like, is there at some point where it's like, no, that really is too much, and you need to be prepared for something here in your own psyche, in the way that we needed to be prepared for flight in the first place through these dirigible sightings. I don't know. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just putting it out there as a
Just
possibility.
putting it out there. People are saying, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an opinion on that one way or another.
Or is it just that we're going to do, because the other option is like, that's not correct, but what we do see is correct from like QAnon to pandemic to drones is
Well,
this common,
let me
this keep going with things that we know are not true, like sane people know are not true, but we're going to keep popularizing them and trying to look for meaning and letting military and whatever whistleblowers sort of form narratives around this that are rabbit holes that we can go down to have fake sense of hero journey where we're learning something and we're growing and we're evolving,
no.
and it's just more of the same.
Let's take a positive spin on this, and also we need to
No.
call we need to call time, because I have to go cook dinner and whatnot. But because there is still food, and which is a good thing, and there is still dinner. But the positive spin, let's put a positive spin on it, because people like us who are, or we are influencers. We each influence at least half a dozen people, you
That's
know,
right.
and
Super important people, by the way.
we are,
Thank you
yeah,
for
oh
listening.
yes, yes. All of them, yes. And
Ko-fi.com/JV to donate. Anyway, go ahead,
so,
Tom.
so, at a certain point, and I thought we had passed it long ago, the absurdity of all of this will become so evident. You got your Marjorie Taylor Greens and I mean, pick your favorite. Tulsi Gabbard. Oh God, pick your favorite person from Hawaii, who is already so absurd that no one could possibly take them seriously. At a certain point, that will happen. That is to say, a plurality of people will begin to say, "Oh, this is nuts. I am going to stop participating." I thought we'd reached that a long time ago. But at a certain point, and it could be a self-correcting process. We're just in, I mean, well, it's, I love, you're not exactly Mr. Cheerful. Um, yeah. Um, will it happen in time? Oh, the whole thing will probably collapse around us. But those of us, not me, I'm too old, who survive, we may have memories of how crazy it got, and if we can keep a memory of how it got so crazy, you know, that will be a good thing.
Sure. But I just want to say to our biggest listener out there, our biggest fan, the universe, if you're doing this universe, if you're co-creating some phantasmagoric drone bullshit to to screw with us, you're not
It's
helping.
not.
You're
It's
not
not
helping,
working.
universe.
it's it's
But with
not
that, I
helping.
just want to let me ask you one more question, just to try to tie this back in a weird way. Could something like that, where the universe throws you an immediate future line to sort of predict what's coming next to help you along, would that be in line in a weird way with, or not, you tell me, with Henry Corbin's Angel Out in Front?
That's a really hard question for me to answer, because I think, I mean, Corbin was all about the reality, or he was all about the ultimate unreality of linear time. And so there's a lot of talk of cyclical time in Corbin. And actually, the person who might be able to answer that question would be Elliot Wolfson, who I mentioned a little while ago, who's the premier scholar of Jewish mysticism in the world today, or at least one of the top. And he knows Corbin really well. And as we discover in Jeff Kripal's books, particularly the most recent one, but also one that he wrote years ago called The Roads of Excess, he talks a lot about Wolfson's theories of time. It's a long-winded way of saying that I don't think that such a future dynamic. I'll go backwards and say that I don't think there's anything in Corbin's cosmology which would deny the possibility of such a thing happening. But I'm not aware of him explicitly talking about that kind of disruption in the time in time sequences in just that way. His appeals to a non-linear time are usually transcendent, so that he can say, we are in paradise now, we just don't recognize it. But he doesn't really play too much with that kind of disruption in linear time. That's the most I can say about it.
But also, he wouldn't say that the universe itself acts as anything, right? The angel out in front is always a personal angel out in front. Like when Jung looks at UFOs in that one book, he sort of can say that the universe is co-creating something for you to see. It's personal, it's impersonal, blah, blah, blah. Would Corban ever be that universal with it? Or is it always
God,
a personal?
no, it's a totally fascinating question, and
Look, I did tie this all up.
yeah, you did, and I'm annoyed at the fact that I don't have a ready answer. That is to say, it's not about me. It's about my understanding of Corbin. That's a really super good question. I don't know of anything in his work that suggests a good basis for an answer, but I guess my intuition he was, this comes back to your original quote from Jung. In a funny way, Corbin's all about the individual's relationship to God, and anything social or cultural seems to him to be epiphenomenal, not really of interest. So there's very little in my understanding of Corbin's cosmology that operates on the social or the cultural scale or time cycles. It's all about the individual's relation to the divine, and your particular place in history is beside the point. Yeah, that's my answer to that.
Okay. Well, Tom, go eat dinner.
Oh my
I think we
God.
did it. We came
Oh
full
my
circle.
gosh. We did come full circle, and God help anyone who listens to us talk about these things. But it's always really interesting to me. And
The My
oh,
Apologies podcast.
I want to leave you with the following thought, which you can edit out at your discretion. But have you ever thought of doing a second edition of Urgency? I started reading it again today, and that is a fucking really good book that
Oh,
I,
thank
I
you.
think I think needs more um something.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think you could get it published by, if this means anything, but it kind of does, maybe through a major publisher. But then maybe you don't want to do that, and it
But
might
I,
it
yeah.
might give you an opportunity to rewrite it or change parts, or leave it absolutely as it is. But it seems to me, in my dotage here, that it's a good book. I mean, I think it's got good stuff in it. That's all.
Well, I had sent it to two major publishers, and they both basically said the same thing. They both said it was good, and they both really liked it. But unfortunately, unless you're like super famous already, it's really hard to sell these books.
Yeah, I know.
So
Right? That,
they
that's the
passed.
problem. That's the problem. That you. I mean, yeah, and republishing it, you probably wouldn't sell any.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, no, that's right. But
Thanks.
but I would, I would flag Jeff Kripal and ask him for an opinion of whether he thinks it would be worth trying, because he knows these things. But the publishing industry is a catastrophe now. Nobody reads anything, so
Hmm.
you know, nobody reads
I'm
my
in good
books.
company.
Yeah, you're in very good company. And it's available as an ebook, so there's that. And there's me telling my six people about, so there's 12 altogether now.
We've got
there's
disciples.
there's your
Perfect.
six, and there's my, oh yes, of course. we we are the two-faced God, and we have 12 disciples.
Thanks, Tom and Jerry. And now, as promised, I read an email and I respond accordingly. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I do. This email, I won't say the name of the person just because I don't know if they want me to, so I'll keep them anonymous. Thank you, anonymous person. Anonymous person says, "Hi, Jeremy. Tom Cheetham introduced me to your work, and I've since listened to all of your recent podcast conversations with him. It's fascinating stuff, and I appreciate it. That said, there's always a but, isn't there? That said, however, I'm skeptical of anyone who claims to know the quote-unquote truth, whether that be from an acclaimed philosopher or an experiencer, etc. Anyway, it seems like you are a philosophical idealist, if you had to label it philosophically, but I don't understand how anyone could really know what's beyond Plato's cave. Aren't we each confined to our understanding through the dream or the shadow of form? How would one determine the reality of the forms and authenticate them? I sense the emptiness in form, but how on earth could one determine that something is fundamental, whether that substance be conscious or not? Is the idea of fundamentalism even helpful in this case? And finally, how can you know that the experiences you've had are not psychic projections? I ask all this out of genuine curiosity, and of course skepticism, for when someone claims to know the fundamental quote-unquote truth, I am off-put, because this is usually a sign of pathology, profound arrogance, narcissism, etc. For reference, I'm much more inclined to the Zen concept and experience of quote-unquote don't know mind, in its relation to emptiness and form. Anyway, you seem like a good-natured guy, and I find your conversations with Tom interesting, so I thought I'd reach out with these questions in the hopes that you're open to such skepticism. All the best. All right. So I partially answered him in a private email, and then I realized, the real answer, the longer answer is, longer. So lucky all of you. You get the longer answer. Where to start? So, the first thing to say, and I've said this on the show a bunch of times through the years, is you should be skeptical. There's no sort of apologizing for that. Absolutely be skeptical. Anyone who's talking about quote-unquote truth with a capital T, as I wrote to him, I'm talking about the unknowable. What are the odds that I know the unknowable? Right? Like on the surface level, it's self-evident that you should be skeptical. But I should probably pause here and talk about the unknowable for a second and just drill down into this, because I don't feel as though in all of my explanations I've really explained it well or concisely what it means to be unknowable. And I think if you get this one little factoid, we don't even have to have any more conversation. But what are the odds, right? So, I mean to say, if you get it deeply enough that the aha moment destroys you, that. So what I mean by the unknowable is not something that you can't talk about, not something that you can't know in terms of storing it in knowledge and roughly speaking about it. Think of it this way, the psychedelic trip is the unknowable. It's something that you can talk about when you have it. You can try to explain it to people. It's not quite going to be what it was in the retelling, because the fact is you need to experience it. The plant medicine journey is to be experienced or is to be lived. That state of mind has to be your state of mind. So unknowable doesn't mean that you don't know anything about it. It means that it is a living state of mind that you must be for it to be quote unquote knowable, for it to make any sense outside of just some words that you can kind of extrapolate meaning from. So when we talk about truth as the unknowable, the difference between plant medicine and what I'm talking about here, for example, is that you don't need to do the plant medicine, right? You can choose to. And it's the same with any of these states and stages of consciousness that you can get to through religious paths. You don't need to follow Christianity or Muslim religion or Sufism or, I guess that's technically part of the Muslim religion, right? Hinduism, Buddhism, go down the list. You don't have to do any of these, believe in any of these things or test any of their paths, but you can, and you can see where they lead to. But truth transcends and includes all, and truth is the self-actualized whole person. And so not only can that just sort of be talked about, but not really be real for you until you are that, unlike the other stuff we're talking about, we must be that. We have to do this. We have to be the unknowable. We have to be the timeless. The body, the form, is already time. It's already expressing time. The physical is already expressing time. The consciousness that lights the vessel of the body currently is a psychological construct of time. Currently is occupied by things in the form of thought. And when all of that goes, we're left with timelessness. We're left with formless awareness. That is us. I can speak about it, but the speaking about it doesn't really do it any service. You have to be it. You have to see the problem of you as a thought form, as a blockage to your own fullness, or to the fullness that becomes you, not to your own fullness, but to the fullness that becomes one in the absence of you. I'm sure that makes sense. That's not confusing at all, right? I knew it. Anyway. He goes on to say, it seems like you're a philosophical idealist, and I had to look that up, and I'm not one. I'm not anything philosophical. What I'm talking about isn't a philosophy. It's actually my own actual experience. And so if that own actual experience, I shouldn't say own, I mean, this is where language fails me, because yes, it is my experience, but it is my experience that we are all what I have experienced. And if it happens to fall into a certain type of philosophy, then okay, but that's not what I'm doing. But philosophical idealism, from just the simple Google search I did, seems to indicate that it is a sort of philosophy of that everything is mental, and it negates the physical, and it says everything is ideals, or ideas, I should say. Everything is ideas and mental constructs, and denies the physical. And I don't do that. So no. And before I go on to keep going on with this, I just want to say to you, sir, you think too much. And this is, I mean, that's not, I'm not trying to denigrate you, but all of this is like, you think too much. Of course you do. You're into this shit, right? Like, you know what philosophical idealism is. You've got a Zen quote at the ready. You're talking about Plato's cave. You're a thinker. And the problem is that all of that thought is what gets in the way. I'll get to that in a second. So you're saying, but I don't understand how anyone could really know what's beyond Plato's cave. Aren't we each confined to our own understanding through the dream or shadow of form? How would one determine the reality of forms and authenticate them? What I have experienced and what I've been talking about on this show is the ultimate state that, you know, if you want to call it that, I mean, these words, right? But that transcends and includes all the others. So you're asking, how would you determine the reality of the forms and authenticate them? Because you are that nothingness in which all these forms exist. I would say arise, but I think that word arise implies that they aren't within. You know, they arise, and then, like, we tend to think that if we think about such things at all as creation, that there is a creator creating, and that that creation exists independently of the creator. But no, the truth is, truth with a capital T in quotes, truth is you are formlessness in simply being is being all forms. So both are happening at the same time. Both are the state of reality at the same time. And that sounds like a philosophy or maybe mental illness or narcissism or something. But it's actually, when you are out of the way, the body is capable of experiencing that first person self-awareness of nothingness prior to and inclusive of the all things. This is the part that's tricky that I'm trying to get at here. This isn't a philosophy. This is the state of being when human mind has dissolved. The mind, if you want to, the mind, the intelligence, that is the case prior to and inclusive of the body projecting a false autonomous self. When that false autonomous self leaves, the original intelligence, the ultimate intelligence, the intelligence per se, however you want to frame it, becomes you. That is a state of being, not a state of thought, right? Like it's actually when thought is dissolved and gone away, you are left with, not you are left with, but what is there, is that which thought blocks out. The intelligence that thought blocks out. I'm just going to let that hang for a second. And you're saying, I sense the emptiness in form. I don't know what that means, the emptiness in form. But how on earth could one determine that something is fundamental, whether substance be conscious or not? So I don't know if this is getting to that, because I'm not exactly certain what you mean by emptiness in form. Unless you're saying, like, you can see the shadow of what I'm saying. You can see because you're picturing a description of emptiness, it's got a form and therefore it's not empty. Like, if that's what you're saying. Yes, but that's who I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to a form, a thought form. I'm speaking to, you. And so in speaking to you, if it's not who you are, if you're you and you are a thought form, and you're not that which transcends and includes thought, the first person of that, experience of that, then all I can do is talk in hypotheticals. So hypothetically, or in metaphors even, or in descriptives, whatever. Like you've heard the menu is not the food, but the problem is this mind only recognizes the menu and is in the way of eating the food. This mind reads the menu and wants to choose something to eat here, but it can't. It thinks it can. It thinks, therefore it is. But it's wrong. So in this case, the menu is, my example is that nothingness. We can all see this as an example, that or as a descriptive. Nothingness is a concept. And a materialist will tell you that concepts are thoughts, and thoughts only exist in the brain, that consciousness comes from the brain. But this thought, this concept of nothingness, by definition, exists prior to the brain, because nothingness, right? So if you have a concept that exists when the brain isn't there, when all things are not there, in fact, you have intelligence that exists prior to all things. Or so it seems. What is this intelligence doing, though? Well, the base thing it's doing is being. What is it being? Things. All things. Not just the singular consciousness that it is, that it implies, the singular intelligence that it implies. That singular intelligence is being differences, is being itself in shards. It's being itself in different forms. So it's sort of oneness and multiplicity at once is the natural state of being of nothing, of this intelligence prior to and inclusive of all things. Now, I'm sure I've written this better than I'm saying it out loud, but that's the basic gist. So that's it. That's the fundamental truth that you can, quote unquote, know. But knowing it doesn't do anything for you, right? Like, I just explained it to you. I may have explained it to you poorly, but even if I had said that in the most perfect way, it's still just intellectual knowledge. Something for you to mull over, something to bounce off Plato and how things seem like they should be to your intuition or to what you've read. It has nothing to do with being the first person identity of that nothingness. So ultimately, if there's anything in that descriptive that is sparking either an aha in you or an anger, as happened with me when I was reading Krishnamurti, the anger of, this guy sounds nuts. Now, you don't sound angry at me, but you are putting out there that this sounds more like pathology or arrogance or narcissism. That's what I would have said about, well, I wouldn't have said arrogance or narcissism necessarily about reading Jiddu Krishnamurti, but pathology for sure. Like, it sounded crazy, except that really smart people stood behind what he was saying, so I realized it's got to be me. Like, I'm not getting something, and I eventually came to see, like, the anger part of it had to do with that, well, had to do with the reason I'm not getting it is because it's the thing that I deeply block out, because it involves the death of self, and nobody wants that. We want to include, right? We want it to be knowledge. We want it to be something we can mull over, something we can control. We don't want it to be that, like, oh, we're annihilated, and in my place what? The unknown? Oh, scary. So I think, unconsciously sort of realizing this as I'm reading him, it was like, oh, this is a turnoff. This is all awful. But smart people are getting it. So it was on me to make conscious what my hang-ups were in reading it, and also to get what the hell he was saying. Right? So when we listen to things like this, we have to be active and trying to understand not just what's being said, but how we're interpreting it and why we're interpreting it. And that's actually more important. How you hear something, why you listen at all. Why you listen at all is important, but how you're taking it in. If I say 8 million times, don't compare this to anything, because that's active listening for this subject, and then you turn around and say, but Plato's cave, it's like, well, you're already doing it. But then your response, rightly would be like, well, but that's my compass in this world, is the things that I know, right? And the things that make sense to me. How else am I to make sense of the world? So it is kind of a revolutionary idea, unfortunately, to say, like, well, you got to put all that stuff away. Because what are the examples of you've got to put that stuff away? People who start cults. That would be one, right? Like, put away your sense of intuition and what's right in the world, and just listen to me, right? Like, I get it. I get that all of that is a problem. But I think if we put everything out on the table, perhaps you will be able to see whether that's what's going on here, or something else is being said that's important to understand. Now, you say, for reference, I'm much more inclined to the Zen concept and experience of don't know mind and its relation to emptiness and form. I don't know what that is. But I would say, a lot of the Zen, bits of wisdom that I've read here and there, and that everyone else has probably read, it all sort of gets to at least a version. Unfortunately, a version isn't good enough, because it's still a facsimile, and it's still trying to lead you to something, the Zen concept. But the concept of, again, emptiness, emptiness from which forms arise. And, to meditate is to get rid of the forms that are thoughts and ideas and blah, 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 to sort of arrive at this emptiness. That is not correct, but it's in being incorrect, it's close. Because there's no you to arrive anywhere. There's no, if I put down thoughts, there's still a me there. There is no you. You are thought. But anyway, you say, I seem like a good guy and interesting. Okay. So, I just want to go back now and talk about the human as an obstruction. There might be a step in here that I've been neglecting to talk about for, going on 15 years or so. Right? Which is, when I talk about, well, let's start over. Nothingness creates and is thingness. Nothingness is intelligence prior to and inclusive of, is in a perpetual state of creating, of being, all. And one of those little specks of detail in the great all is the body, the human body. And the human body has an ability to create its own sense of a creator, its own person, me, the self, me. And this self wanders around thinking it's autonomous, thinking it's real, thinking it's separate. If you're born into a nature culture, you're less likely to have this problem, this solid self-identity. You're more likely to be communal. But that's got its own issues, and they aren't probably yours or mine. So we'll stick with what we've got, which is westernized people. That's pretty much who I'm talking to. So westernized people wander around with this autonomous sense of self. We think that our problems are our own. We think we have this baggage, if we even acknowledge the baggage anymore. I don't know. A lot of people are just nuts. The way you suspect I might be, or fear that I might be, is like what other people actually are, which is like so in denial of their issues that they've gone mad and put their faith in fascism. So, good night, everybody. No. But for those of us who still want to deal with ourselves and look at ourselves, we think that our baggage is like something separate from us, that our thoughts are different than emotions, generally speaking. And that there is this me who sits atop these emotions and thoughts and makes decisions about them and functions in the world and is the person of the body, above and beyond thoughts and emotions. But really, it's all thought. The thought that, as Jiddu Krishnamurti would say, you're the thought that thinks you're the thinker. The reality is, hey, you're Zen, right? Buddha pointed this out. Sorrow is common to all, right? So, but everything is common to all. This is the point. There's the human mind, and the human mind gets expressed through the human form. But these human forms have decided, I'm not expressing human mind, I'm expressing my own mind. But if you really look at what you're expressing, it's the same crap everyone else is expressing. I mean, if you live in a big city and you take the subway, as I used to do, you can look around you and see dozens, if you include the entire train, hundreds or thousands of people all in their own heads, mulling over their day, mulling over their problems, mulling over what they wish their future would be, what their plans are for the future. They're all doing this, and they've all got the same template of emotions and responses and whatnot to utilize as their palette, as their, like the artist with the paints. But we're all the same paints, and therefore we're all the same artist. And it's the human mind. So we think that we are our own stream of consciousness, but we're actually an expression of this larger human stream of consciousness with its polarity, the good and the bad, or the good and the evil. That's actually what we are expressing. It's just that we're sort of delusional in thinking that I'm alone in this. Now, truth, with a capital T, in quotes, is the consciousness that transcends and includes all. And so it has nothing to do with this dysfunctional, unhealthy, delusional sense of self. where this delusional sense of self is, truth is not. This delusional sense of self, of course, wants to believe that it's evolving and getting better and trying. And for some people, part of that is being a spiritual seeker and seeking out truth as something that you can bring into you, incorporate into yourself. Perhaps master aspects of, control, not die to. That's the part that's like, oh. And so this gets into, once you get to die to, then it becomes, well, how do I do that? And it's like just seeing the truth of this is the act of the how. That's it. If you see it so deeply that it strikes you down, that's it. If you don't see it so deeply that it strikes you down, then it's just more conversation. You know, this is a conversation until it kills you. That's what this show is. That's what my life's work is, if you want to say it. My life's work, after just saying there is no my. But you know what I mean. It's all fun and games until somebody gets killed. But not physically. And you know what I mean? Like, I love to make jokes, and I like to say, but then, part of me always worries that there's going to be some goofball who's like, oh, you're talking about suicide, huh? Or, whatever. No, we're just talking about listening. You listen to other people and you read other works on subjects that interest you or that are your occupation, that give you aha moments, insights and inspirations and things like this. Well, this conversation, if it does that for you on any level other than the self going blank, then it's just more thought. Like, mechanically, this works the same way. Listening to this gives you that aha moment, but that aha moment kills you. That aha moment doesn't bring you to further, illuminations and on your merry way you go. If it does, then you don't get it, right? Like, that's how black and white this is. And nothing else that I can think of is this black and white. So because that's true, we sort of done away with the black and white. We like to say everything's a scale of gray because everything else is. And then, of course, we know that people who claim that truth is black and white are often creeps and cult leaders and self-aggrandizers and all that. So there's a problem in speaking about absolutes or the absolute it's hard to do that without triggering everyone who's talked in absolutist terms about absolutisms that are false. But this is, I feel like, I don't know, to me it's simple at this point. It's like the first thing you need to understand is that you are thought. You're not separate from your thoughts. You're not to suppress your thoughts. You're not to like meditate and whittle it down to one thing that you concentrate on and all that. You are thought. And then the next thing to realize is that even that's not completely true, because you're not autonomous thought. You're expressing human mind at large, this nebulous field, this, however you want to put it, stream of consciousness called humanity. You're expressing that. And so these issues are not yours. They're everyone's. Everyone is depressed. Everyone's upset. Everyone gets jealous. Everyone does everything. To greater or lesser degrees. Like, not everyone's baseline is the same. If you take the emotional graphic equalizer of a person, they're all going to be set to different, unique levels. But the tones coming through, or the frequencies or whatever, are exactly the same. To whatever extent they come through, that's individual, and that's based on your upbringing and your genetics and your diet and where you live and whatever else. This is just a fact, right? And so we're saying, like, is there something that is there intelligence that is not that? Because part of what's in that field of human consciousness is all the religious shit, is all the so-called spirituality, all the paths. That's all the known. That's all in the field of the known. That's all thought constructs. So is there anything that's not comprised of thought? Is there intelligence that isn't in the field of the known, that doesn't exist there? And if there is, What's its relationship to the field of the known? There is none. At least not from the field of the known. The field of the known can't touch that, but that unknown may be able to touch the field of the known, although indirectly, like through, for example, the person understanding all of this and dissolving, and then truth becoming the voice of the body, and then speaking into time, this timelessness, speaking into form, formless awareness. The trick is to have that happen and not have it become a religious staple, have it not become some story in time, something that you can travel to or become a master of, to not then wrap a story around it and keep it in the field or in the stream of human consciousness. To say that that's not enough, we can't do that anymore. Right? We have to be that ultimate mind. Not just go fishing in it. Not just take what we like from what other people have claimed about it. Because you're right, you don't know. I could be lying. I could be lying about the specifics of me. But if what I'm saying is true, in general, if you stick with it, you may just find that out for yourself. You know? But, I mean, it's weird because it's hard to talk about this stuff without just like going, well, Krishnamurti already said it best. But he kind of did. He kind of talked about all this already. It's like there are qualities in life, such as beauty, that are not comprised of human thought. When you see a beautiful scenery, when you are enmeshed in the ocean, the mountain, the sky, and that sense of self either dissolves and you sort of, or lessens, or, you know, whatever that is, where you sort of feel onenessy with nature, or you lose yourself like a child loses him or herself in a toy. You become the moment in that sense. That's not because, you know, beauty obviously is not from thought. What you think about beauty is the thought. But beauty itself exists, whether that mountain exists or not. Right? The object of beauty is the temporary thing. And the absolute thing is beauty per se, this quality called beauty. So I guess I'm saying if you look at examples like that, you can see that there do exist things that are of intelligence, but not coming from the form. Not coming from, I mean, the mountain isn't, again, it exists independently of the mountain. You destroy the mountain, you're still going to find beauty somewhere. Because that's what beauty is. It's everywhere. So I'm just using that to just say, like, there are examples of it. There are examples of, and also that sense of beauty speaking through, let's stick with the mountain, speaking through the mountain or coming at you through the mountain, it can take you aback. It can take you by surprise, and it can, that can strike you, right? Like that can make you forget yourself. It's not the same as the death of self, but it's a similar thing. Like you forget yourself. Now you're just in the moment with this mountain. And it may become some sort of like, quote unquote, spiritual moment for you where you're like, oh my God, now I realize I'm one with nature. I had this moment where I realized I was one with nature. Unfortunately, now I'm back to being me, and now I've got a longing for this moment a second ago where I felt as though I was one with nature. Why do I have to live this life out of nature? It sucks. The self-dissolving and truth being the case is like that. It's not exactly that. Because, I mean, the good news is there's no longing afterwards. Because you know what you are. You know what beauty is. You know, like, there's no longing for it. Even if you, over the years, harden in your self-sense as I have, there's still no longing for it. Certain changes, even again, if you fall from grace the way I have, stay. So that's good. Now the trick is to do it and not screw it up and come back to normal like me. That's your charge. Um, should you accept it? So I would say that when you're asking about how can you know like what reality is versus the shadows and Plato's cave, that's all about human consciousness. That's all about the stream. And truth is not of that stream. So I don't have to deal with shadows and monsters, or shadows and whoever the beings are doing the play on the other side of the shadows, or whatever that is. Like, that's all interesting and fun to play with, as Carl Jung has done. But as we talked about in the last episode, that was his wrong turn of not understanding quote unquote emptiness. Really, of not understanding nothing. And thingness, of course, not wanting to understand nothing, will divert your attention and call other things nothing. So maybe you have a trip, a plant medicine journey, and you end up feeling as though you are in the darkness of space, or a blankness and emptiness and nothingness, and it's depressing, or it's lonely, or whatever. And then you don't want it anymore. Then you reject it. Well, that's thingness talking to you about nothing, right? That's a facsimile and a horror movie version to keep you from understanding this, because to understand this is to kill thingness. Thingness doesn't want you to kill it. The human stream doesn't want to die. It wants to keep playing good and evil out over and over again. Right? The universe only wants you to not transcend and include it, but just sort of dip a toe in the waters of something that brings it new experience to express. Same as you want to do. Same as the self. These are the same. They're just, the scale is different, but that's it. And you say, well, how do you know this? Well, it's self-evident. But also, it's not to be known. It's to be lived. It's to be living as. You're right. Knowledge of this doesn't do anything. It just creates a new religion, or a new path, or a new whatever, a new mistake. There's really only one way to listen to any of this, and that is with the intent to understand it on its own terms. And if those terms dissolve you, if the full understanding is that you are dissolved, then you've understood fully. Then that's it. Anything less than that is not getting it. And that not getting it can lead to all sorts of creative other ventures, as it always does. But those aren't it. And then a religious person of ye olden times would tell you, that's fine, you'll get it the next life. We don't have a next life. We've got nukes. We've got global warming. We've got competing ways to murder ourselves that are bigger than ye old past, because they can affect the entire planet. Right? Like, we're not just talking about, we don't just live in little villages anymore. We don't just have even a big nation, but no concept of what's across the world. Like, no, we're all connected, and we've all built weapons, and we've all built global pollution and beyond into space to kill us all, to kill all life, animals, plants, whatever, with the promise that we will never do that, because even though we've invented this, the better angels of man will step in or will become us, and we just would never do that. We would invent it, but we would never do it. We'll pollute, and we'll do all of this awful stuff to ourselves, but we would never do that. Well, here we are doing that. So we don't have time for this, right? We got to get this. Or we die on the vine. I mean, these are the consequences. This isn't like judgment, and it's just consequences. You either figure yourself out as a species, or you die on the vine. It's funny how we get that about, if we watch animals in nature, we can get that. But when it comes to us, we think like, nah, we're eternal. We're going to go on. Science will science its way out, Before God would do the magic and just keep us alive. And now science will science our way out of it. But even that, we're at the end of even wanting that, right? There are people who are like, science, no way. No way. The vaccine's worse than the disease. And the reason is because I don't believe the God of the Bible would kill us off, because the God of the Bible told us everything's here for us. So how can this stuff around us kill us? Unless that's God's will too, and then that's just fine. But it's like, like everything we do is like imagined, and we just pretend that that's reality, and we pretend that that is like higher thought and that we're above. And, you want your narcissism and your pathology and all of that. I mean, that may be me, but look around. It's everyone. The arrogance is real, folks. It's westernized mind. At least that. So I hope this made sense, but if not, I will take another shot at it next week with Tom Cheetham when I bring up the question I got on Blue Sky from another listener. It will sort of dovetail in with this. Anyway, I hope this made sense. This is one of those things that makes complete sense in my head, and then when I open my mouth, it's like, can't get words to form around truth. But I would say, I wrote about it in Urgency, so if you haven't read Urgency, it's all there. Probably written better than I speak it, but if you want something free, just go to YouTube and watch any Jiddu Krishnamurti video, or go to the, Google search any topic in Krishnamurti and see what pops up from the Krishnamurti Foundation as like an excerpt or whatever from his talks. It's all there. He wasn't a cult leader either. Actually, he was born into a cult and rejected it. So that to me is fascinating. Anyway, but it's something that you've really got to like sit and pay active attention to listen. You can't like have it on in the background. It's really tough listening nowadays because people have like attention deficit disorders and hyperactive this and that, and they're on autistic spectrums. Like there's all kinds of stuff that we are now that was just beginning to be a problem when I was a kid, but is now like full blown, like 1 in every 3 people has this problem. And the problem has to do with either paying attention, period, or being able to understand because you're missing some facility that doesn't get what's being said somehow. It's like we're literally turning ourselves into the robots that we want to give consciousness to for some reason, even though we know they're going to kill us. That's another way we're going to kill ourselves. Hey, we just keep coming up with them, but don't worry, we're not going to use them because we're better than that. Right. See you next week.